I absolutely love my classic iPod from 2007. And I think the one thing to me is that without a doubt, if it wasn't for this, I would probably go insane. I'm not actually being serious, by the way. It's just kind of a thing where I can't really live without my iPod. I know what everybody's probably gonna ask me. Why do I not use iPod Touches? Or generally just any sort of iPod that is like, well, just a touch screen. Let's talk. Now, to make one thing clear, I do not hate the iPod Touch range at all. In fact, I would actually say that the entire iPod Touch range is actually pretty good, without a doubt. Like, I love the idea of touchscreens nowadays, especially with something like, I think CoverFlow really works. It really isn't perfect though. Like, it really isn't perfect. Now, there are advantages with iPod Touches in general, like the touch screens and that stuff and everything like that. But instead of talking the advantages, I'm gonna talk about the reasons why I don't use the iPod Touches. Which, the first reason, absolutely so forth, and I have the lock switch on, which is the modifications. This is extremely serviceable, which means you could swap out the battery, the hard drive with an SSD or an SD card. You can change all the parts like the click wheel, the buttons, the entire shell, the screen. You could add Bluetooth to it. There's a lot of things you can absolutely do. You can even change the OS on the iPod if you really wanted to, something like Rockbox or something like that. But you can't really do that with these guys. I mean, these guys aren't really all that serviceable at all. Like, in fact, I would have to say that the big thing here is you could maybe swap out the battery, maybe do the casing, but there's so much involved. Like, you have to take out the screens and then desolder and resolder. Even if you do all of that, the big thing with this is that the modifications are not easily worth it. Which, I mean, you probably have to go to another person just to make the modifications. Which, time for the second reason, the storage. The storage is a big thing for most iPod users. I think, if anything, if you don't have a lot of music, you can probably rely on an iPod Touch. But the big thing is that the iPod Touch is limited from 8 gigabytes to 256 gigabytes depending on the model. You can't see that, you can barely see it. It has 8 gigabytes in it. Yep, it just went out of focus. Meanwhile, this guy right here has 128 gigabytes of storage, and majority of that is taken up, as you can see, by the music. And it isn't even a case where you can upgrade the storage in the iPod Touch either. Like, the storage you get is what you get. Meanwhile, something like the iPod Classic is something you can absolutely swap out the storage with if you decided to in the first place. And I just realized I had it on the going through the song thing. I have this set up with 128 gigabytes of storage because this is a 6th gen. If it was a 7th gen, I could go all the way up to 2 terabytes if I really wanted to, although 50,000 songs is like 70,000 songs is the limit for this iPod anyway, for the 7th gen. This also applies with the iPod minis too, because you can swap out the storage amount if you really wanted to. I mean, it could go up to 256 gigabytes on the 2nd gen minis, which isn't all that better than the iPod Touch, which, I mean, the 7th gens could go up to 256 gigabytes, but still, I don't see it being worth it if you can't really get the same modifications, which comes down to number 3, the better sound quality. These two do actually have their own amplifiers, which, I mean, these both do actually have speakers. It's so quiet though. These both do have speakers, which in fact is a massive advantage, but I mean, it's still, like, they aren't as good in the headphone jacks, which, I mean, they still do have headphone jacks. Nice one, Apple. I think simply the last reason, which I will give, because I think it's the big reason why I don't use an iPod Touch, is just the touchscreen. The touchscreen has just become such a thing of the modern age, which, why would I want another touchscreen when I could just use my phone as my main source of music if I really want to? Sure, you could absolutely use your phone, which I don't use my phone as a music device. I mean, I use it for some music stuff. But I would rather, of course I have to put it over here, I would rather use a classic little guy with a click wheel that can just and go through all the music that I shall go through. The touchscreen in itself has just become such a main staple that it's kind of like, why would you want another device unless you're dedicating yourself to not listening to music through like, because I don't really see a point to using a touchscreen like this unless it absolutely could be a case where I could risk my current iPod more than anything. Like, it's not worth that time to use something on a regular basis unless I feel like I absolutely really need to. Yeah, the touchscreen's fun, the cameras and that stuff are nice and everything. These have their own advantages, yes. But you already have your phone as it is. So why would you use another touchscreen just to use it unless this is like your main device and absolutely so and so like that? I don't see a point unless you're absolutely using it for the main thing in itself, which is music. Which, yes, music is the main thing here, and if anything, I mean, in itself, I think it's really nice to know that you could just listen to your music in your pocket, even watch music videos, or anything like that in your pocket. Like, but you don't need much more than that unless you're using it as your main device, which most of the time the iPod Touch is probably just used as a music device. I mean, people have their own, like, advantages, disadvantages, their like pros and cons, but I see the main point of just using a music device on its own, the advantage. The big thing is that if the iPod in itself is gonna be the main thing, I would rather use an iPod Touch. If the iPod is something which I would use on a regular basis, I would use the iPod Classic. And the iPod Touch is nice, but I just don't see a point to using it on a regular basis. So I'm gonna say thank you guys so much for watching. Comment, like, subscribe, and I also put Amanda the Adventure, this Jacksepticeye video on here. This is actually a pretty cool feature on the iPod Touch, but I don't really see a point outside of that. I'll see you guys later when I talk about Elite Obsolete Electronics. Bye!